Continuing our conversation here on News Talk with former D.C. Mayor, former Ward 7 Councilman, former Council Chairman Vince Gray. Phone lines open for your questions and comments this holiday Monday as we continue to talk with former Mayor Gray. Our number, as always, we'll post it to the bottom of the screen, 703-387-1020. Those of you watching in the 11 a.m. hour can join the conversation, and as always, we hope you do. We'll go to the phones as your questions and comments come in. In the wake of the U.S. Attorney's decision to wrap up the investigation of the 2010 campaign, are you thinking about a return to politics? Are you thinking about running for office in 2016?
I certainly have been thinking about that, Bruce. The council will have elections during 2016, of course, and we've been thinking about one or two opportunities there. Bruce, this shouldn't have happened. If you look at the polls that were taking place during the re-election campaign, there were several polls, and we were ahead anywhere between 8 and 13 points in each one of those polls. The press conference that was held by the then U.S. Attorney, Mr. Machen, certainly had a major role to play in what happened. One need only look at the voter turnout, Bruce, to have an appreciation for how devastating that press conference was. Let me just use Ward 7, because we've been talking about Ward 7. In Ward 7, in 2010, you had 14,800 people who voted in that election. In 2014, in the immediate aftermath of this press conference that Mr. Machen had, 6,200 people voted. That's roughly a 60% drop-off, and the same thing happened in Ward 8, same thing happened in Ward 5. When you put those three wards together, you have about 21,000 votes difference between 2010 and 2014.
Not votes for or against you, just the turnout.
The turnout.
And you think people were frozen into not knowing, into the sense that it was the intimation that something bad was coming that was never followed up upon, so to speak.
That's right. I think people concluded, that I was going to get charged with something, and those people, those wards I talked about were wards that I won. For example, with Ward 7, I won 80+% of the votes. I won the overwhelming majority of the votes in Ward 8. I won the overwhelming majority of the votes in Ward 5. And by the way, I still won those wards. I won Wards 5, 7, and 8. But the voter turnout was so low, it tamped down my votes, and we lost as a result of that.
Did you hear the comments that former federal prosecutor Jim Shalik, he was a federal prosecutor for decades. When he was on the show not long ago, he said, I live in Maryland, not D.C. I don't know these people. I could care less who won. But when I look at what happened, it's outrageous. Did you hear those comments? And what was your reaction if you did?
Well, I agree with him. It was absolutely outrageous. There's a term prosecutorial misconduct that's been used. It certainly has resonated with me. Also, there's a code of ethics to which prosecutors are obligated, and that is not to interfere with the outcome of an election. I don't know how you can't conclude that this election was interfered with, Bruce.
Should the DOJ Office of Professional Conduct, or whatever it's called, I apologize, I didn't research the name exactly, but should there be a review internally of what went down?
Well, absolutely. That obviously is a decision that they have to make. I can't believe that they're happy with what happened here. You look at the fact that there was somebody who was involved in this case too for several years, and was then the declared candidate to become the next U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia after Mr. Machen left, and he wasn't hired. They hired an outstanding person, and that is Channing Phillips. But look at this. It took them 4.5 years to get to where they got to, wherever they got to. And it took him, 6 to 8 weeks to be able to go through this case and say, look, there's nothing here.
A poll that you commissioned showed you beating, more popular at the moment than the Ward 7 incumbent, and she's up next year, Yvette Alexander, and you would do better than, if the election were held today and the poll was accurate, you would do better than the at-large incumbent who is up in 2016, a former colleague, Vincent Orange. What do those numbers say to you after all you've...
I think the first thing is, Bruce, I didn't commission it.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, it was other people who did it. They wanted to do it. I was not
people
involved
who like
at all.
you.
Yeah, there were supporters who did it, but I had no role in that.
Okay, so people who like you and feel you were wrong, and think you still have something to give. They did a poll, so thank you for that. What are given all you've been through, and the fact that there was a cloud over the time you were mayor, with no charges brought at the conclusion of all of it, what did the numbers mean to you when you saw them? What sort of feelings did you have, and to what extent do they influence the decision that's in front of you now?
Well, it's tremendously uplifting to see that kind of confidence expressed in me. If you go back to our mayoral term, all this stuff that was being investigated, I wasn't even the mayor during that time. It was in the campaign that preceded me becoming the mayor. If you look at where this city moved during the 4 years that I was mayor, there's virtually no area where we didn't make substantial progress. We even chronicled that in a publication that we published widely. You probably even have a copy of it, Bruce. So it's very uplifting to be able to get that kind of feedback from people. There are a lot of people who are very angry about what happened. They feel like they were hoodwinked, that they were led to believe, and I think they were led to believe that something was going to happen to me.
Indictment by press
That's
conference.
right, exactly. And the court of public opinion basically was played to. Now, those were people who were probably going to vote for me, and what they decided was, well, he's going to be charged with something, so why bother to, no point in voting for him. I don't want to vote for these other people, so I'm just not going to vote. It was one of the lowest turnouts that we've ever had in an election in the District of Columbia.
Despite a very exciting election environment where you had an incumbent running for re-election and a bunch of known challengers. So it wasn't like I mean, we don't have boring elections in the District of Columbia, and if we did, this wasn't one of them.
This was not a boring election at all. I don't know.
Are you leaning to, I mean, if they were to move, I'm being stupid now, just trying to get a sense of where you are. If they were to move the polling, the filing deadline up to tomorrow, and someone said, we think you have a lot of gas in the tank, you have to file for something. Here's the paperwork. Would you choose Ward 7, where you got your political start? Would you run at large and have the whole, if you won, then you would have the feeling that the whole city was behind you, or that you had the stuff to run successfully citywide?
Well, both of those are wonderful opportunities, Bruce. And I'll make a decision one way or the other what I'm going to do in a matter of a few weeks. I am a public servant by heart. That's what I've done with my entire life. I've either worked in the nonprofit sector or for the last 10 years I've been in some form of elected office. I love serving people. The opportunity to serve the people of Ward 7 was very attractive to me, and I ran for that office. But frankly, the opportunity to do things for people all across the city is very attractive. We ran, Bruce, if you recall, on a mantra of one city. And the idea of that was to say that irrespective of where you live, you should have the same opportunities, the same doors opening for you, no matter where you live in the city. So one or the other would be an attractive opportunity.
If you're on the council, think back to when you were mayor and former Mayor Marion Barry was on the council. Should residents, independent of whether they think you're great or are happy you're gone, whatever, should there be concern that the moment you get in, there's all this drama between you and Muriel Bowser, and if she's for it, you're against it, and there's endless squabbling about who gets the blame for this or the credit for that, and then there will be the drumbeat of, are you going to run in 2018? I mean, some of that is, a lot of that's just politics, and so what? We all need to grow up. But to the extent that people sometimes don't like unnecessary drama, would that be a feature of your return?
Well, I'm sure that people who will speculate about it, Bruce, just as you did.
No need to thank me.
But, I've always been constructive. If you look at my time as Ward 7 council member, as the chair of the council, and as mayor, I worked in a very constructive fashion. I worked for the good of the city, and I will continue to do that no matter what my role is. I will continue to work for the good of the city, and that will be, if I go back and run for elective office, it will be because I think I can make a difference in the growth of the city.
Lastly, and we're over on time, but I do want to get to this. You had lunch with President Obama very soon after he won.
Yes.
He won in 2008, of course, took office in 2009 within a first... I wonder what they're doing up there. As long as the ceiling holds, right?
It's the resounding applause for us being here today.
It is indeed. It was only a matter of weeks that he was in office when you two had lunch.
Correct.
And I bring this up because his last State of the Union has come and gone. He still has 12 months, so a lot of time. But you could look at this guy and say, he's really done nothing for the district. And I'm curious, did you leave that lunch with a sense that when he thought the timing was right and the opportunity presented itself, that he would do something substantive to help the District of Columbia?
I was hopeful, Bruce. I can't say that I left that lunch with a firm commitment to him to do anything. As a matter of fact, I asked him about even the tags on the car at the time. And he told me that was a decision that the Secret Service made. So
and this is the two of you at a very big table having lunch?
Yeah. I don't want to misrepresent and suggest that he's told me he was going to do specific things because he didn't. But you know what? Irrespective of whether it was said or not, it's a travesty that our city continues to go through this. Bruce, I think about the budget situation we went through in 2011. When we got arrested. There were 41 of us who got arrested because of what they did about the district's reproductive rights for women. And then 2013, Bruce, that is the travesty of all time. And that is when they decided to shut down the federal government. I got the memo as the mayor that said, all right, Mayor, we need your shutdown plan. I said, what do you mean shutdown plan? What are we shutting down for? Well, your budget has to be approved by the Congress, and just like all the budgets for all the departments of the federal government.
Even though the funds are local.
Yeah, that's the point. And that was the point I was making. Listen, these funds are generated by the people of the District of Columbia, now 670,000 people. We raised it through income taxes, property taxes, and sales taxes from the people of the District of Columbia. And you may recall, Bruce, at the end of the day, we said, we're not shutting down. Every employee of the District of Columbia is considered essential, and we are going to continue to work. We used the reserves that we had built up. We'd gone from $700 million to $1.87 billion. We had the money to reach into the bank to keep our government open for those 16 days. We even, by the way, Bruce, picked up the trash for the federal government from the parks and didn't charge them anything in the course of it. We deserve better treatment than we have gotten.
He doesn't have a magic wand. It's not like he can just sign his name to a document and all the second-class status stuff goes away. And he's got other things on his plate. But to the extent that he has 12 months and he's still the president and he could help end this historic injustice or unequal treatment.
Yeah.
What could he do realistically, and not a lot of time that we have left?
He's got a bully pulpit. He can stand up and talk about how unconscionable it is for 670,000 people to be treated in this fashion. The District of Columbia is the only nation's capital of 114 in the world that doesn't have a voting representative in its national legislative body. He can use a platform. There is no greater platform, frankly, in the world than that of the President of the United States of America, and I hope he will use these 12 months to continue to make that case.
Former D.C. Mayor Vince Gray, thanks very much for being with us today. When you decide on which of the options before you're going to choose, I hope you'll come back and announce here on News
Thank
Talk.
you, Bruce.
Good to have you. Good to have you as always. We'll get you caught up on the hour's top stories and the frigid forecast in just a moment. And then, do Maryland lawmakers have a conflict of interest when it comes to drunk driving legislation? Keep it here.